Ethan opened his eyes slowly, his mind heavy like it had been trapped in thick fog for years. At first, he saw only a soft blue light above him, and strange shadows moving across the walls. A steady humming sound surrounded him, mixed with the quiet beeping of machines he didn't recognize. He blinked several times, trying to clear his vision. Shapes began to form, strange curved walls made of smooth silver metal. Glowing lines that pulsed like they were alive. Then he saw her, a tall figure standing beside his bed, her skin a soft shade of pale silver, her hair falling like liquid metal over her shoulders. Her large, deep silver eyes locked on him with an emotion he couldn't understand: relief, sadness, and something else. When she spoke, her voice was soft, almost breaking. "Human, you've been asleep for 20 years, she whispered, "and I never stopped watching over you." Ethan froze, his thoughts stumbling over her words. 20 years. That couldn't be right. The last thing he remembered was the roar of battle, the sharp pain in his chest, the blinding flash, and then nothing. It had only been a moment ago. Or so it felt. But now, here he was, in a place he didn't know, with a strange alien woman watching over him. He tried to sit up, but his body felt weak, his arms trembling with the effort. Pain shot through his chest, and he gasped, looking down to see a long, thin scar running across it. "Easy," she said quickly, gently pushing him back down, her touch surprisingly warm. "Your body is still recovering." Ethan stared at her, his voice rough and dry. "Who are you?" Alien woman smiled faintly, though her eyes still shimmered with tears. "My name is Liara," she said. "I was the one who found you." He swallowed hard, his throat aching. "Found me? Where?" Liara's gaze shifted away, as if she didn't want to answer. "Far from here. In the ruins of a battlefield," she said slowly. "You were dying. The others thought there was no point in saving you." Ethan frowned. "Then why did you?" Lyra's lips pressed together, her voice low. "Because I couldn't let you go." Her words made no sense to him. Why would an alien, a stranger, care enough to keep him alive for 2 decades? He tried to search her face for answers, but all he saw was a quiet determination. She reached for a small metal cup on the table beside his bed and lifted it to his lips. Cool water touched his mouth, and he drank greedily, his body desperate for it. When he finished, he asked the question burning in his mind: "What happened to my world?" Lyra's expression darkened, her eyes falling to the floor. "You're not ready to know that yet," she whispered. Frustration grew in him. He wanted to know everything: why he was here, what happened to Earth, and why she had stayed for so long. But his body was too weak to push for answers. Instead, he closed his eyes for a moment, the sound of the strange machines filling his ears. The silence between them stretched. Finally, Liara spoke again, her voice softer than before. "Promised myself. No matter how long it took, I would be here when you woke up." Ethan opened his eyes and looked at her again. There was something in the way she said it, like it was more than duty, more than kindness, something he didn't yet understand. And in that moment, as he lay in that alien bed under the watch of a silver-eyed guardian, he realized something. Whoever Liara was, she had been a part of his life for far longer than he had known. And whatever had happened in the last 20 years, it was only the beginning of the answers he was about to find. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, his legs still weak, but his mind sharper than the day before. Liara had helped him take a few steps earlier, her hand steadying him like a patient teacher. Even now, she stood close, watching every movement. As if she feared he might fall, he glanced at her, his voice low. "Tell me, why did you stay?" 20 years is a long time. Liara didn't answer right away, her gaze moving to the floor as if searching for the right words. Finally, she said, When I found you, the others told me you would not last a day. They said your species healed too slowly, that keeping you alive was a waste of resources. Ethan felt a small surge of anger at the thought, and yet, you didn't give up. Lyra's lips curved in a faint smile. I made a promise. I told myself that no matter how long it took, I would see you open your eyes again. She began to pace slowly, her voice taking on a quiet strength. I visited you every day. I told you about the station, about the changes in the galaxy. I read stories to you. Even though you could not hear me, her silver eyes softened. I talked to you like you were still there, because in my heart, you were. Ethan didn't know what to say. In his mind, only minutes had passed since the battle, but for her, too. Decades had slipped away. You must have had your own life, your own people, he said. Lyra nodded slowly. I did, but I gave it up, my rank, my position. Even friendships, they called me foolish for watching over a human. A lump formed in Ethan's throat. No one had ever done something like that for him. Why me? He asked quietly. Her voice was steady, but her eyes carried a depth he couldn't read. Because something inside me knew you weren't just another soldier lying in the dirt. I knew you would matter again one day. For a while, neither spoke. The low hum of the machines and the distant echo of footsteps outside the medical room filled the silence. Then Ethan asked the question he had been holding back since he woke. My friends. My family, are they? But Lyra quickly shook her head, cutting him off. Ethan. Not yet. Your body is still healing, your mind still adjusting. If I tell you everything now, you might break before you have the strength to stand. Her words left him uneasy. If the truth was so bad that she feared to say it, then it was worse than he imagined. But he could see the determination in her face. She was not going to be moved. So, for now, he let the matter rest, though his heart felt heavy. Lyra stepped closer, her tone softening. Do you know how many times I thought you would never wake? Do you know how it felt to see you breathing but never speaking? Never opening your eyes? Ethan shook his head slightly. No. But I can imagine. It felt like waiting for the sun in a place where the sky never clears. She whispered. Her words struck him deeply. He realized that for her, those years were not just about keeping him alive. They were about holding on to hope in a galaxy that had given up on it. And for the first time since waking, Ethan felt something warm inside him. It wasn't strength yet, but it was the beginning of it, he decided, silently, that if she had carried him for 20 years, then maybe it was time he started carrying himself. The first time Ethan left the medical room, his legs felt like they were made of stone. Lyra walked beside him, her arm lightly supporting his back. Her steps slow so he could match her pace. They moved down a wide hallway that curved gently, the floor smooth and glowing faintly beneath their feet. Strange markings ran along the walls, symbols he didn't recognize. Yet they seemed alive, shifting slightly when he looked at them too long. Ethan had expected to see something familiar, maybe other humans, maybe even a view of Earth from a window. But instead, the first face they passed was nothing human at all. A tall creature with skin like cracked red stone glanced at him, its 4 black eyes narrowing before it turned away quickly. Another alien, small and covered in soft blue fur, stopped to stare at him openly, whispering something to a companion in a language he couldn't understand. He slowed his steps, lowering his voice. Why are they looking at me like that? Lyra didn't answer right away. Humans are rare here, she said carefully. Rare. He repeated, her eyes flicked to him, then away. You'll understand soon. They reached a large chamber, and Ethan froze. The ceiling was so high, it vanished into shadow. Glowing pathways crossed above them like floating bridges through the vast glass wall on one side. He saw a giant swirling planet below, a storm-filled gas giant with colors of gold, red, and deep purple. It was beautiful, but it wasn't Earth. Where are we? He asked, his voice almost a whisper, on the station of Arca Prime, orbiting the planet Virilon. Liara replied, the names meant nothing to him. But the fact that he wasn't anywhere near Earth made his chest tighten. They walked through the open marketplace, a place full of movement and sound. Vendors shouted in alien tongues. Lights flashed above stalls selling glowing fruits, shimmering cloth, and devices that seemed to move on their own. Yet everywhere they went, eyes followed him. Some looked curious, others suspicious, and a few seemed afraid. He noticed a large, armored alien mutter something as they passed, and his companion gave a sharp, uneasy glance at Ethan Liara. He said quietly, "Why do I feel like I'm not supposed to be here?" She gave him a small smile. "That didn't reach your eyes. You're still recovering. You need rest, not questions." But Ethan's mind wouldn't rest. Why had she avoided telling him about his family? Why did strangers look at him like a threat? And why had she been so desperate to keep him hidden for 20 years? As they reached a quieter corridor, Ethan glanced through a side window and froze. Beyond the glass, docked at one of the stations, ports, was a massive ship, black and sleek. Its hull marked with jagged symbols that looked almost like scars for a moment. He thought he recognized the design from somewhere deep in his memory. Then it came to him. He had seen ships like that in the last days of the war, enemy ships. His pulse quickened. Liara, is that? But before he could finish, she stepped in front of him, blocking his view. "Not now, Ethan," she said firmly, her tone sharper than before. "You're not ready for what that means." Her words were final, but his thoughts were not. The more she tried to protect him from the truth, the more certain he became that the truth was dangerous. And somewhere in his gut, he knew this station wasn't just a place to heal. It was a place full of secrets, and some of them had his name written on them. That night, Ethan could not sleep. The quiet hum of the medical machines felt louder than ever, and his thoughts kept circling the same questions. Why had Liara avoided his questions? Why did strangers look at him with fear? And why had he seen an enemy ship docked so close? Hours passed, the lights in the hallway dimmed, and most of the station had gone silent. Ethan decided to walk, using the wall for support as his strength was still weak. The corridors were almost empty, shadows stretching under the pale blue lights. As he turned a corner near the docking area, voices reached his ears. 2 alien guards stood by a doorway, speaking in hushed tones. Their language was not one he understood at first, but then one of them spoke a word he recognized, human, Ethan's. Body tensed, he leaned closer, staying in the shadows. The guard with scaled green skin lowered his voice even more. "The human weapon. They say it survived the final strike." The other, a tall one with insect-like features, clicked his mandibles. "If the High Council learns it's here, they'll destroy it before it can cause another war." Ethan's breath caught. Were they talking about him? Weapon. Final strike. He wanted to hear more, but the guard suddenly stiffened as if sensing something. One glanced around, and Ethan quickly slipped back into the darkness. His heart was pounding by the time he returned to his room when Liara came in the next morning. He didn't wait. "I heard them," he said sharply. "The guards, they called me a weapon. They said something about the final strike." Lyra's face froze for a second before she tried to hide it. "Ethan, you shouldn't." "No," he cut her off. "Tell me the truth. Now." She took a long breath, her eyes meeting his with a heavy sadness. "Earth lost the war," she began slowly, "in the last days. Your people fought harder than anyone expected. You destroyed fleets, you broke through enemy lines, and you almost turned the tide." Her voice grew quieter, but the other races feared what humans could become. They united against you. They destroyed your homeworld, the survivors. Scattered into the galaxy, Ethan felt like the air had been sucked from his lungs. "Destroyed. Earth," he whispered. Liara nodded. When I found you, the war had already ended. The galaxy agreed that no human should hold power again, many believe. Your kind should never rise again. He stared at her, trying to process it. And that's why you kept me hidden. Yes, she admitted. If they knew you were alive, especially a soldier, they would kill you without hesitation. Ethan's hands curled into fists. So for 20 years, you've been protecting me from the galaxy. Not just protecting you, Liara said softly. Protecting the last piece of a world that is gone. The room was quiet, except for the low hum of the machines. Ethan's mind burned with grief, anger, and confusion. He wanted to fight, to do something, anything, but his body still felt weak. Liara reached out, placing a hand on his shoulder. I know you want answers, but you must stay hidden for now. But in that moment, Ethan made a silent decision. He was done hiding. If the galaxy thought humanity was finished, he would prove them wrong. The first signs came quietly. A few new faces appeared in the marketplace, strangers who didn't belong. They were armed, but their weapons were hidden under long coats. Their eyes scanned every corner, every face, as if searching for someone. Ethan noticed them during his daily walk with Liara. They weren't like the curious stares he had grown used to. These eyes carried intent, predatory intent. Liara? He murmured as they passed a stall selling glowing fruit. We're being watched. Her eyes flicked to the side for only a second. She didn't break stride, but her voice dropped to a whisper. Don't look back. Keep walking. They returned to her quarters in silence. Once inside, she sealed the door and activated a shimmering energy field over the entrance. They found out, she said quietly. Who? Ethan asked, though he already feared the answer. Bounty hunters, Liara replied. There's a price on your head, high enough to make killers cross half the galaxy to find you. Ethan sat heavily on the edge of the bed. Why now? Liara shook her head. Rumors. It only takes one whisper, one careless word. Someone saw you. Someone talked. That night, the air on the station felt different. He could sense it even from inside Liara's quarters. The quiet tension, the way footsteps echoed too close. He couldn't sleep, and neither could she. She sat near the door, a sleek alien rifle across her lap, her eyes never leaving the entrance. It happened fast. The sound of the energy field sparking, then failing. The door slid open with a hiss. A shadow stepped inside, tall, armored. Moving like liquid metal, Ethan's instincts took over before he could think. Get down, he shouted, grabbing the nearest object, a metal chair, and hurling it toward the intruder. The bounty hunter sidestepped easily, but it gave Liara the moment she needed. A blinding blue shot burst from her rifle, striking the wall beside the attacker and sending a wave of crackling energy through the air. The intruder staggered, but didn't fall. Ethan lunged forward. His body still weak, but driven by pure adrenaline, he tackled the figure, the impact knocking them both to the floor. The bounty hunter's helmet turned toward him, and he saw his own reflection in the dark visor. A voice hissed through the cum. So it's true. The human lives. Ethan's hand closed around the attacker's weapon and ripped it free. He didn't have the strength to aim properly, but he pressed it against the alien's side and fired. The bounty hunter cried out, the shot burning through their armor, and they shoved Ethan back before retreating through the doorway. Liara fired again, but the shot missed as the attacker vanished into the shadows of the corridor. For a long moment, the only sound was Ethan's ragged breathing. Liara hurried to him, checking for injuries. You're bleeding, she said. Pointing to a cut on his arm, he waved it off. I'm fine. But now they know for sure. Her face was grim. We can't stay here. The next one will bring more and stronger. Ethan nodded. Then we leave. Liara hesitated. Once we step off this station, there's no going back. Good, Ethan said. I'm done hiding. The station was no longer safe. Ethan and Liara moved quickly through the dim corridors, keeping to the shadows. Every sound made Ethan's pulse quicken, the distant clang of metal, the hiss of doors opening, the echo of footsteps that might belong to hunters. Liara carried a small pack on her shoulder. Inside it were a few rations, some medical supplies, and a data tablet. "This is all we can take," she whispered. "We can't risk going back for more." They reached a docking bay where small personal ships were kept. Most were locked with biometric codes, but Liara walked straight toward a sleek, silver vessel, its hull shaped like the wing of a bird. "This one's mine," she said. "I kept it hidden under false records. No one should suspect it's still active." As she began unlocking the ship, voices rang out behind them. "There, stop them." Ethan turned to see 3 armed bounty hunters rushing toward them. Weapons raised, Liara slammed her hand against the control panel. The ship's hatch sliding open with a hiss. "Inside, now," she shouted. They scrambled aboard as blaster fire lit up the bay. Ethan ducked behind the control seats while Liara powered the engines. The ship shook violently as a shot grazed the outer hull. Then the thrusters roared to life, and they shot forward, bursting out of the docking bay into the vast star-filled void. But escape was not so simple. Almost immediately, 2 small hunter crafts detached from the station and gave chase. "Strap in." Liara barked, pulling the ship into a sharp roll as enemy fire streaked past. Ethan gripped the seat, his body pressed back by the sudden acceleration. Through the cockpit glass, he saw the swirling colors of the gas giant below. It's massive. Storms churning like an endless ocean, they dove toward an asteroid belt, jagged rocks spinning slowly in the dark. "They won't risk following us too close in here," Liara said, weaving between massive chunks of stone. But the hunters did follow, their ships darting in and out of the shadows. One fired, the blast exploding against a nearby asteroid and showering them with glowing debris. Ethan spotted the weapons console beside him. "Can I use this?" he asked. Liara nodded sharply. He strapped himself in and gripped the targeting controls. Locking onto the nearest pursuer, a burst of plasma shot from their ship, striking the enemy's wing and sending it spinning into a rock. The explosion lit up the darkness, but the second hunter was still closing in. Liara pulled hard on the controls, guiding their ship into a narrow gap between 2 huge asteroids. The enemy tried to follow, but clipped the edge, sparks flying before it fell back. For the moment, they were free. Breathing hard, Ethan leaned back in his seat. "We made it," he said. Liara didn't look relieved. "No, they'll send more. They won't stop until they find you," she said anew. Course, the stars shifting as the ship turned. "Where are we going?" Ethan asked. "Somewhere the hunters won't follow," she replied, "a place hidden far from the main routes. A place I've only heard about in whispers. A human colony." Ethan's eyes widened. "You mean?" "There are more of us." Liara glanced at him. "If the stories are true, yes, but reaching them will be dangerous. No maps lead there, and the path is through old war zones." Ethan looked out at the endless stars ahead for the first time since waking. He felt something new. Hope, but it was a fragile hope, and he knew the road to it would be lined with danger. Days turned into weeks as Ethan and Liara navigated through old war zones. They passed the ruins of great battles, shattered ships drifting in silence, twisted metal floating like the bones of giants. Sometimes they had to power down completely and drift, hiding from patrols that still searched these regions. Each day brought them closer to the place Liara had promised. Finally, one quiet evening, a faint signal appeared on the ship's scanners. It was weak, almost buried under static. But the words were clear. "Haven. Coordinates? Under attack." Ethan's chest tightened. "That's them?" Liara nodded grimly. We're almost there. She pushed the ship to its limits, stars blurring as they raced toward the signal. When they emerged from hyperspace, Ethan's breath caught. Before them floated a hidden world, a small, green planet wrapped in swirling clouds. But above it, chaos raged. Several enemy ships orbited the planet, firing down toward its surface. Tiny human defense craft swarmed around. Them outnumbered and outgunned. We have to help, Ethan said instantly. Liara shot him a look. We're one small ship. We can't take on a fleet. Then we make them think they're facing more than one, Ethan replied, already sliding into the weapons seat. The first pass was fast and brutal. Ethan's aim was sharp, hitting a smaller enemy craft and sending it spiraling into the planet's atmosphere. The humans below noticed their comms lit up with voices. Unknown ship, you're fighting with us. Name's Ethan, human soldier, he replied. Let's finish this. They weaved between enemy ships. Lyra's flying as sharp as any combat pilot. Ethan targeted weapon ports, shields, and engines, crippling ships so the human defenders could finish them off. Still, the battle was desperate. One blast slammed into their hull. Alarms screaming, we can't take many more hits. Liara shouted. Ethan's eyes scanned the chaos until he saw the largest enemy ship, the command vessel. Take me close to that one, he said. Liara hesitated for only a moment before nodding. They dove through the crossfire, slipping under the massive ship's belly. Ethan locked all weapons and fired at a single point, the same spot over and over, until the hull cracked open in a brilliant explosion. Without its command ship, the enemy fleet began to scatter. The human defenders cheered over the comms. As the last few attackers fled, Liara guided their damaged ship toward the planet's surface. When they landed, a crowd was already waiting. Humans, real humans, ran toward them, their faces full of disbelief. An older man stepped forward, his voice trembling. You're alive. Another one of us, Ethan, stepped out, his legs shaky but his heart steady. For the first time since he woke, he was surrounded by his own kind. Liara stood beside him, her presence drawing curious looks from the crowd. A young boy stared at her. In awe. Is she with you? He asked. Ethan smiled faintly. She's the reason I'm here. That night, the colony celebrated their survival. Fires burned, voices sang, and for a few hours, the pain of the past seemed far away. Ethan stood at the edge of the camp, looking up at the stars. Liara joined him quietly. You found them? She said. We found them, he corrected. He knew the galaxy was still dangerous, that their enemies would come again. But now he had people to fight for, both human and alien. And as long as Liara was beside him, he knew he would never be alone again.